At the furthest edge of Scotland's Outer Hebrides, where civilization ends and the void begins, stands Eilean Mòr. This is not just an island. It is an isolation laboratory built in the heart of the Atlantic. In December 1900, this laboratory had 3 test subjects: James Ducat, Thomas Marshall, and Donald MacArthur. These men were the Lords of the Light, tasked with guarding a 22-meter stone pillar against a godless ocean. The Eilean Mòr Lighthouse was a masterpiece of engineering, designed to withstand the crushing weight of the North Atlantic. But as any engineer will tell you, a structure is only as strong as the men inside it. The protocol was simple: keep the light burning, record the logbook, and survive until the next relief. But on December 26th, when the supply ship Hesperus approached the island, the protocol had not just failed, it had evaporated. There was no welcome on the landing stage. The flagstaff, usually a beacon of human presence, was bare, and most importantly, the great light, the very pulse of the island, was out. The captain sounded the whistle, a sharp blast that should have brought men running. He fired a flare, a streak of crimson against the gray sky. There was no answer, only the deafening, rhythmic roar of the North Sea. 3 experienced sailors, men of grit and salt, had vanished into the mist. Today, we pull this file from the dusty shelves to look for the cracks in the stone. This is a forensic analysis of a system failure. Relief keeper Joseph Moore opened the main door with trembling hands. The heavy iron door was locked from the inside. This is our first critical forensic data point. The fortress was secure. Whatever horror unfolded, it did not breach the walls. The last man to leave was composed enough to follow the exit protocol, turning the key against the very world he was about to vanish into. Inside, the scene was more terrifying than chaos. It was abnormally normal. In the kitchen, an untouched meal of cold meat and potatoes sat on the table. It looked as though time had been sliced mid-second. A chair lay overturned on the stone floor, suggesting a sudden, violent movement, a leap of panic or a desperate rush toward the window. The clock on the wall had stopped, its pendulum frozen like a heart that had seen too much. But the most haunting evidence waited in the hallway. In the brutal winters of the Hebrides, a keeper does not step outside without his oilskins, the heavy, waterproof armor of the sea. There were 3 hooks. 2 were empty. On the 3rd hung a single yellow oilskin. Think about the psychological weight of that missing garment. It tells us that 2 men left prepared for the gale, but the 3rd, likely MacArthur, fled into the freezing salt spray in nothing but his shirt sleeves. In the forensic world, we call this a critical deviation. What could possibly terrify a seasoned mariner so much that he would choose the certain death of a December storm over the safety of a stone tower? More disturbing than the physical stillness was the mental record left behind. Thomas Marshall's logbook is a document of a soul under siege. In our 2026 reconstruction, we don't see these entries as mere words, but as the metadata of a collective psychological breakdown. The entry for December 12th begins with a chilling observation: severe winds. Never seen the like. Marshall records that James Ducat, a man known for his stoic silence, had become unnervingly quiet. Even worse, he describes Donald MacArthur, a veteran of the roughest waters, as crying in the corner. Why would men who had spent decades fighting the sea suddenly break down over a wind? The anomaly deepens when we cross-reference this with historical meteorology. By feeding 1900 climate data into our 2026 predictive models, we find a staggering discrepancy. Between December 12th and 15th, the skies over Eilean Mòr were clear. The winds were negligible. The sea, according to the records, was calm. This leads us to a terrifying forensic hypothesis. Were these men suffering from a collective hallucination? Was the storm they recorded not happening in the atmosphere, but inside the narrow, echoing halls of the lighthouse? The final entry was made on December 15th. Storm ended, sea calm. God is over all. It is the last heartbeat of the Flannan Isles. After that, the ink runs dry. As a forest engineer, I am trained to see the landscape as a series of forces and frictions. When we apply this to Eilean Mòr, the supernatural dissolves into the lethal reality of physics. The island is not just a rock. It is a specialized killing machine composed of basalt and gravity. First, let's analyze the topographical trap. The western landing is a vertical ascent of wet, black basalt. When this stone is saturated with salt spray, its friction coefficient vanishes. It becomes a frictionless slide into a churning maw of white water. A single slip here isn't just an accident. It's an irreversible exit from the physical world. Second, we must consider the acoustic trap. The island's geological fissures are perfectly shaped to catch the wind and compress it. This creates infrasound, sound waves below the frequency of 20 Hz. While you can't hear it, your body feels it. Infrasound is known to cause extreme anxiety, cold sweats, and even visual hallucinations. Imagine these three men trapped in a stone echo chamber, bombarded for days by an invisible frequency that told their brains they were in mortal danger. The phantom storm, recorded in the logbook, might have been the brain's way of rationalizing the physiological torture caused by the very island they were standing on. They weren't haunted by ghosts. They were being unmade by the wind. So, we reached the final synthesis. What is the most likely forensic sequence? The evidence at the West Landing holds the key. Investigators found iron railings twisted like wire and a 1-ton boulder ripped from its moorings. This wasn't just a wave, it was a rogue wave. A wall of water with a pressure exceeding 100 kilopascals. The scenario is this. Ducat and Marshall went down to secure the landing. They were in their oilskins, fighting the surf. Suddenly, the ocean produced a monster. MacArthur, watching from the kitchen window, saw his brothers about to be swept away. In that split second, the protocol died. He didn't grab his coat. He didn't think. He kicked over his chair and sprinted into the maw of the Atlantic to save them. He arrived just in time to be taken with them. The ocean swallowed all three, then returned to a deceptive, glass-like calm. The door remained locked, the clock remained stopped, and the single oilskin remained on the hook as a monument to a failed rescue. Eilean Mòr still stands. The light still cuts through the Scottish mist. But the three keepers remain in the blind spots of history, ghosts of a system that forgot to account for the unpredictable fury of the sea. Subscribe to FolkloreFilesX for more forensic dives into the world's most enduring mysteries. This is Case File 002. Closed, but never forgotten.